Okay, and just to recap, so we're still speaking about Clipatnoga, which is really the theme of this chapter, chapter 7 in the Tanya. Clipatnoga is the neutral realm of this world, and it's up to us to channel that realm to the side of good or to the side of holiness. To give some practical examples, this includes eating, for example. We can eat for holiness, or we can eat for just self-pleasure, and then that neutral realm cannot be elevated. And sleep and exercise and all these neutral things that we may engage in. That's what Clipatnoga is. Now, we did speak about, just to go a little bit deeper into this, we did speak about last week about this idea that one may do something that is considered to be not in that neutral realm, seemingly at least, something holy. One can do a mitzvah, but that mitzvah is done for very selfish purposes. And if that's the case, then really we haven't elevated the item or the moment itself of the mitzvah. Because again, it's done just for me and for my ego or for my self-indulgence. And if that's the case, then really that mitzvah also kind of remains in the Clipatnoga realm. You gave a very harsh story last week, on page 176. But let's continue. At the bottom of page 176, as you mentioned, Margot, in this book, right?
Correct.
With the words, these acts, utterances, and thoughts. Does anyone want to read? Anyone?
Okay.
All right, Margot, I guess. Let's go for it. Go.
These acts, utterances, and thoughts are no better than the vitalizing animal soul itself. As we said, the animal soul does not imply the degradation of man to the level of animals, but is the definition of man as an animal. A higher form of animal, as the donkey, is higher than the worm, but no different inherently. Just as the animal soul itself is neither good nor evil, so are its thoughts, speech, and deeds, whether sophisticated or simple, elevated or base, whether connected with essential needs or mere desires. These deeds, if they do not constitute the fulfillment of a mitzvah, are not done for the sake of serving God, are, like the animal soul itself, of the realm of Klipa.
Right. So it's important to note this, because you can beat yourself down saying that, oh, I have an animal soul, I'm therefore partially animalistic. It's not a bad thing. Animals are not bad. It just depends how you channel them, depends how you train them. Same with the soul, with this animal soul. Of course, we're not speaking here about the divine soul, but the animal soul itself depends how we train it. We can train it as we train animals to do good, or we cannot train it, and then it remains animalistic and impulsive, and it can even eventually take control of us, take control of that divine soul. Yes, Ronnie.
And everything you're saying is perfect. But that's looking at the 10,000-foot level, coming down further now. For the individual, it's seeing what are those pieces, the animal soul pieces. What are the good ones? What are the bad ones? Which ones need to be turned up and which ones need to be turned down? And the same thing with the godly soul. Which one needs to be turned up and down? So, okay, thanks.
No, that's a great question. I think everyone has a different type of animal or animal soul, right? For some people, their greatest inclination is, or the greatest animalistic impulse is, I don't know, self-indulgence, like we spoke about. For other people, it's laziness. For other people, it's arrogance, right? Everyone has their own animal to deal with. By the way, it just reminds me of Winston Churchill. In his biography, it speaks about how he suffered from depression. And it's interesting to note because it ties to this. And he would relate to his depression as a black dog that constantly barked at him. And he remembers being on a ship one day and he wanted to jump off the ship, commit suicide because of this deep depression. But somehow he managed through life not to get rid of the black dog ever, but to control it. So that even though it was barking, it wasn't setting the tone for him. And it's an interesting analogy, but I think it's very much connected to this.
That's a difficult journey part, is finding out what is that black dog?
Right,
What is
right.
it?
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Everyone is a different type of animal. Some people it's not dogs. Some people it's lions, or some people it's rats. It doesn't matter. But everyone is a different type of animal, and but it's not just figuring out what that animal is, but in a way, it's figuring out how to control it, so that it doesn't push you off the cliff or doesn't push you off the ship.
What are the, I think it's the attributes of that animal that need to be recognized, just not the animal. What are the attributes of that animal that are the good ones and the bad ones?
Right. Same, but every animal has its own attributes. That's what I'm saying. You have to figure out what type of animal, of course, meaning the different types of attributes, different types of inclinations. Now, but the goal again is not necessary to get rid of it.
No.
But rather to channel it and to enable it to become maybe
A good thing.
propeller of good and not, God forbid, the opposite.
And bring it into balance. First, bring it into balance.
Yeah. Okay, good. Very good. Yeah. Okay, let's continue, unless of course there's more comments or ideas. Anyone? No. Okay. All right, fine. I will add one thing, and so this animal soul in Hebrew is called the nefesh habahamit, again, which means the animal soul. But it's interesting to note that the word for animal in Hebrew is behema. Behema in Hebrew means it can mean something else. If you almost spell the word of behema a little bit differently, you spell it like ba hema. It means in. Ba in Hebrew means in. Hema, these. Now, in these, and the Kabbalists explain that behema, animal, the animal soul, we can't get rid of. Why? Because in these, in the animal, there are positive attributes. It's just a question of dissecting the animal and knowing bad from good, and knowing what can be controlled and cannot be controlled, knowing what attributes it has, and so on and so forth. But with the animal soul, we have to go inside it. Ba hema, go in these attributes, in these things of this animal that we have, dissect it, and that's how you can eventually elevate it. So in the word animal, we already have the approach of how to deal with it. Don't get rid of it, but go ba hema, go inside the animal, and then decide what is good for you, what is not, what has to be controlled, what can't be redeemed, what can be redeemed, and so on.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Love it.
Yeah.
Rabbi?
Yes, Diana, please.
I was reading an article out of Israel this morning, and it was talking about how everything in our bodies and our minds and whatever, it's so interrelated that it's very, very complicated system. They were using the COVID, people who had survived COVID as an example of what their bodies now will be open to because of what was in their bodies, even though they don't have it anymore. And I'm hearing this and I'm relating it to that article that I read, because everything is so interrelated.
Right.
And we have to discover what's in our bodies and what we are as people. And there's I didn't save it. I wish now I would have forwarded it to you.
Right. No, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
It's one of the Israeli papers that I get them all.
Right. Right.
Beautiful.
No, it's beautiful. Very nice. It's so true. I mean, and that's, I think the Tanya is deeply psychological too, because indeed it teaches us to go to, as they put it, know thyself. You have to know thyself, and that includes every part of yourself, right? Your body and your soul. You have to know thyself in order then to know how to be how to fulfill the purpose for which you were created. And it's therefore all connected, like you just beautifully said. That's right. It's true. Yeah. I think that's why it's important also to spend time with ourselves. We can't, sometimes we're so involved. That's, by the way, I think that's the beauty and that's the secret of Shabbat. For 6 days of the week, we're running and racing and doing what we're doing. But on Shabbat, God tells us, excuse me, if you don't have that day in which you can focus inwards and know thyself, then you'll get lost in that rat race of life. So pause at least one day a week, disconnect and reconnect to the deeper self, know thyself. Because without that day, really, we can't live meaningfully and purposefully. So
I've never heard it expressed that way. It's beautiful. I've always heard it expressed from, Shabbat was to connect with God, but how important it is if we're not connecting with ourselves first. That's beautiful.
yeah, no, absolutely. And that it's almost, goes hand in hand. Your deeper self is a part of God. So by connecting to yourself, you are connecting to God. So it's not negating what you just said, right? But I think it's very important. Now, that's the Shabbat, but also within every day, I think we need moments to connect to ourselves. And everyone has those moments and that are best for them. Some people do it early in the morning because that's when it's peaceful and quiet. And some people do it late at night before going to sleep. Some people do it in the middle of the day. It doesn't really matter when, but it does matter to have those moments so we can know thyself, know ourselves, and then better know also how to take control of that animal and also take control of the divine self too.
So a question, what you were just saying, know thyself, take some time in the day, morning, noon, night. Is it better to do it at a certain time most days, or it doesn't make any difference? The timing doesn't make any difference either.
Like I said, yeah, I think the timing doesn't make a difference. I mean, the Talmud quotes examples like Hasidim Rishonim, the first Hasidim of 2,000 years ago would do it before prayer in the morning. They would really sit down, the Koved Rosh, as it says, with a heavy head, just a little translation, and contemplate and maybe even speak to themselves. But other people, they're not morning people, like they say. They're more night people, so they do it at night. Maimonides himself would engage in deep self-introspection at night before going to sleep.
And you're saying whether it's morning, noon, or night, but these people were consistent in when they did it each day.
Absolutely.
The consistency was,
That's right.
And Rabbi, I would call it gifting to yourself.
Very nice. Very nice. Very nice. Good. That's right. Jordan, did you want to say something?
No, I just took myself off mute.
Okay. All right. Fine.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Let's continue. Let's continue then at the bottom here, at bottom of page 176. Does anyone want to read?
I'll continue.
I'll give Margot a break if she wants.
Yeah, Jordan, you go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. Everything in this totality of things flows and is drawn from the second gradation in the Klipot and Sitra Achra, namely a fourth Klipa called Clipatnoga.
Right.
In his vision of the divine chariot, the prophet Ezekiel beheld a storm wind coming from the north, a great cloud, a flaring fire, and a gleam surrounding it. As we mentioned in chapter 6, storm wind, great cloud, and flaring fire refer to the three profane klipot. The fourth klipa is alluded to in the phrase, and a gleam noga surrounding it, indicating that this klipa is not completely dark, but contains a gleam of light. Clipatnoga, literally the luminescent husk, is not as gross as the other husks, but although perhaps more palatable, it is a husk nonetheless. By way of analogy, some fruits come encased in a double covering, a tough outer shell that is completely unfit for consumption, and a finer inner rind that can, with the proper preparation, be eaten. The desire for Clipatnoga, as in the desire of a Jew to eat kosher meat, is described in chapter 8 as a Jewish demon. In contrast, the desire to eat pork is an alien demon, a desire associated with the three profane klipot. But also the Jewish demon, the lust for what is kosher and permitted, is klipa. It is not decidedly evil, but for that very reason, it is even more difficult to overcome. Distinguishing between permitted and forbidden is easier than distinguishing between holiness and klipa within the sphere of the permitted. A person can do all that he is obliged to do and avoid every prohibition and still, without realizing it, be immersed in the klipa all his life.
Right. So it's interesting because, yes, to go back to this analogy, I mean, of Clipatnoga, so of the peel that he says, that some peels are inedible and some peels, but have within them, right, or maybe just below them, the, how does he call it, the inner rind that can, with the proper preparation, be eaten. And that's the light within the husk, right? The luminescence in this husk, or the noga in the klipa. And that's really, I think, the toughest job of the human being on planet Earth. To be completely holy, that's pretty much easy. To meditate all day long on the Tibetan mountains, that's pretty easy. I think to be a monk is probably easier than doing this. Why? Because you're disconnected. You remove yourself from any temptation. To be completely on the other extreme, to be completely materialistic, I think that's also pretty easy. You're immersed in materialistic pleasures all day long. But to be somewhere in the middle, to be in this world, yes, to stay above it, to go to the peel, yes, to find the rind, the inner rind that can, with the proper preparation, be eaten, and to go in the husk and find the luminescence, that's much, much harder. Yet it is the duty of the human being to go in the world, yet not be overcome by it. And I think that's why there's so much emphasis here in the Tanya on the Clipatnoga, because in a way, that's the emphasis of life, to connect ourselves with this world, yet to throw away the peel and keep that inner rind. What's interesting, though, is that, to use the same analogy, they say, and I don't know if that's true, please correct me if I'm wrong, that's, I grew up hearing this all the time, and that is that most of the vitamins of the fruit are in that inner rind, right? Like
The skin.
in the skin of the fruit, not necessarily in the fruit itself. Is that correct? Has anyone heard that, or am I the only one?
No, I heard that
On the
also.
fruit.
You've heard that?
It depends on the fruit. It does
Yeah,
make.
it depends on the
Okay,
fruit.
that's the fruit. Because maybe we want to add that when we do accept upon ourselves to engage in that type of work, that's when we're most rewarded. That's when you have most vitamins too. But
I think
regardless.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry, say that again. What?
I was going to say, if you're thinking about fruit and the difference between them, think of the strawberry where the seed is on the outside.
Right,
and not
like
the
William was saying
inside.
last week. Right, very good.
You know you're getting the good stuff when you eat strawberries.
That's it. No, very well said. But I just want to go back to this point that Robert Stans is making, and that is that it's tough, because that's where we feel the conflict of life. You have the Jewish and you have the demon. You have the husk and you have the luminescence. But as we engage in this world and in that peel, really, we have to be able to remember to always connect to the luminescence, because the conflict, the tension is so strong, specifically in that realm. On the other hand, as the Ethics of Our Father says, it is not up to you to finish that work of extracting the luminescence from the husk, but you also, you are not free to release yourself from it. Yes, I know there's a temptation to disconnect from this world sometimes, or to just give up and fall into our materialistic pleasures, but it's not, we can't decide for ourselves to release ourselves from this work. It's almost the purpose of life. Purpose of life is to engage ourselves in this work of extracting the light from the peel, or the inner rind from the peel itself, or the Jewish from the demon, to use these analogies. Yes, Ronnie.
In the reading, excuse me. In the reading that was just done, the word lust was used.
Yeah.
What is the definition of the word lust?
According to the Oxford Dictionary, or according to?
According to your heart.
I think the lust is following an animalistic impulse without any thought or control.
Stop. Excellent. I love it.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, fine. I don't know if it's the Oxford Dictionary definition.
No. For
Okay.
me, that was,
Okay,
and it's I think an important definition to fully understand what that means.
right,
These animalistic, understanding what are those animalistic kind of things?
right,
What are they? What do we want to control
right.
or don't control or balance?
It's very true. That's right. Yeah,
That was the question. What are they?
yeah, yeah. Right. Yeah. So yesterday, I'm not going to give the whole spiel, but yesterday we spoke, I think it's just connected, and that's why I'm mentioning this. But yesterday in synagogue, we spoke about how Esav's head was buried with his father Yitzchak, according to the Midrash. Body was not. And Esav is the person who maybe represents lust and the impulses and, you know, the animalistic soul. And he had a complete disconnection, as we mentioned yesterday, between the head and the body. The head is what is good in the human being. It's what adds, again, control and thought and perspective and the ability to dissect, right? The inner rind from the pure. The body has none of that ability. The body is full of impulses, inclinations, and temptations, and so on. Esav did not live a wholesome life, and his head was not really connected with his body. And we see that even during his death, where only his head, that which is good, was buried with the righteous, with his righteous father. The body was buried somewhere else. Now, in a way, I think it alludes to this idea that we are given a head. God gives us a head for us to use it. I remember growing up in South Africa, there was an ad, you know, it was immediately after the apartheid, and they wanted to encourage Black children to go to schools. That's something they didn't have the fortune of doing during apartheid, unfortunately, and to pursue their education. And the slogan was that, if I'm quoting accurately, the slogan was, the human brain is a terrible thing to waste.
Mm.
And I think in a way, what the human brain does, if we don't waste it, is that it makes us wholesome, connects then to the body, not just literally, but also, spiritually, it connects to the body, and it enables this driver to go to his driver's seat and drive the body to its good destinations. While if the head is not part of the calculation in life altogether, then it's like having a body floating on earth. And we've all seen, I don't know if you've all seen, but I've seen chicken without heads. They go and they don't even know where they're going. It's like they, until they die, until they collapse and die. And there's a lot of bodies like this on planet Earth. But the beauty of having a head is indeed to help us make ourselves wholesome. First of all, we become wholesome by listening to that head, by almost directing our body with that head. That's how we can dissect, again, the luminescence from the husk and so on.
Who controls the head?
Well, then that's a good question. So then who controls the head? I would say God himself. The head is to listen to what and ponder upon what God wants from it, right? Body can't do it because it's a body, but the head can do that.
And maybe there's an intermediary, and maybe that's what the God soul is.
Right. It's true. Very true, right.
Is that really true that they separated his head?
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole story. It's a whole story. So when I'll tell you, I'll try to say the story on one foot, but when Jacob was about to be buried, so Jacob had instructed his children to bury him in Israel with his forefathers in city of Hebron. And he died in Egypt at the age of 147, but his sons wanted to, of course, fulfill his promise. So they carried him and his coffin to Hebron. And after a long journey, they reached Hebron, and there was Esav blocking their way, Jacob's brother. And Esav was telling the family of Jacob, I'm sorry, there's only one plot left and it belongs to me. Our father Yitzchak bought two plots, the two remaining plots in this land, one for Jacob and one for Esav. Jacob already used his plot for his wife Leah.
Oh.
That means there's only one plot left, and that's for me.
Hmm.
And the children of Jacob said, "You're right, but our father bought this plot from you.
Hmm.
And we even have a document that proves it, that he bought this plot from you." He said to them, I don't agree. That's not true. You're making it up. Show me the document and maybe I'll concede. I didn't have the document with them. The document was left in Egypt. So they told Naphtali, who was the fastest of brothers, he ran like a deer, and that's why he's compared to a deer, to run back to Egypt and get the document. Now, in the meantime, they were standing there with the body of Jacob, and one of the grandchildren, his name was Hushim, was deaf, and he couldn't quite understand what was happening. All he could see was Esau blocking the way. He says, I don't understand this complete disrespect to my grandfather. What's happening? And we have to wait for Naphtali to come back. It's going to take days, if not weeks. So what he decided to do is take a plank of wood, according to the Midrash, and then knock his head or kill Esau. Get out of the way. We want to bury our father.
Wow.
And knock his head completely. And apparently he hit the head so hard, or he beheaded him. I don't exactly know what the graphic details are, but the head of Esau then with this blow
Wow.
fell off and it rolled into the grave of his father Yitzchak.
Hmm.
And his body was buried elsewhere. Then they were able to continue with the procession and then eventually bury Jacob. But that's what the story of the Midrash is.
Wow.
Quite a graphic.
A good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
And the
yeah,
ghost
but
of Aesop has been running around ever since.
But the deeper idea, just to connect to this and refocus on this, is that it maybe represents this. Midrash gives us the image of an Esau versus the image of a Jacob. Jacob, which represents the righteous, and Esau will represent really the wicked, or those who are in complete, or whose animal souls are in complete control of them.
Hmm.
The people whose animal souls are in complete control of them have this figurative image of the heads being disconnected from their bodies. They don't use their heads. And it's disconnected. And we see that at the moment of his death. Jacob, on the other hand, when his procession continues, his head is connected to the body, and the body and the head are buried together, of course, glued to each other. Again, to represent this image that the righteous have the heads on their shoulders, and the heads continue to guide them and almost dissect, like we said, the luminescence from the husk itself. And I think it's the goal of life altogether. Because as we said, to run away to one of the extremes, that's easy. But to focus on extracting the light from the peel, that's much harder, yet you cannot release yourself from that work.